I want to speak to you briefly about the importance of being open to feedback. I remember when I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic at the age of 31. I was admitted to hospital. I was skinny for the first time in my life, and that part of it was great, but apparently it wasn't so good. So they put me into hospital to stabilise me. And even though I had two brothers who are diabetics, I shouldn't have been surprised by that, but at the time it was a big deal. I was feeling quite emotionally vulnerable over the whole diagnosis. But the nurses were very good. They said, "Ken, don't worry, the diabetic educator will see you, she'll reassure you, she'll teach you how to manage the condition, you'll be fine." So after 3 days of being in hospital, I hadn't seen the educator, so I asked the nurses to arrange a time. They arranged an appointment for her to see me in the ward. She didn't show up. So I had the nurses follow up again. She arranged a new time for the following day. Once again, no show, no phone call. She did this to me 3 times in a row. At that time, my frustration built to the point where I checked myself out of hospital, saw my GP and got started that way. But 2 weeks later, I was still feeling rather let down, and I was stewing on that disappointment a little bit. And I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll give her some feedback. So I ring her up and I say, "Hello, it's Ken Warren here. I'm a newly diagnosed type 1 diabetic." She said, "Oh, Ken, your name rings a bell." I said, "Yes, I was in hospital, we never met." She said, "Oh, yes, I remember you now." And I said, "Look, I've got to tell you, I was there for a week and I never saw you once. You had 3 appointments to see me, you never kept them, you didn't even call. And I've got to tell you, I felt really, really let down by that." And she responded, she said, "Well, Ken, you're still in the process of being stabilised. You're probably overreacting emotionally to what happened." And I said, "Well, I see people by appointment for a living, and if I can't keep an appointment, I'll at least call them. And then I bend over backwards to make sure I keep the following one." And she said, "Ken, you sound like you're an overreacting type 1 to me." And I said, "Okay, thank you very much." And I hung up the phone. Now, in fairness to that educator, I had no idea of the pressures that she was under. Perhaps I could have given feedback in a better way or at a better time. And I think at some level we've all done what she's done. When people have given us unsolicited feedback, we get defensive, our hearts start beating a bit faster, we start thinking, I disagree with what this person's saying, in fact I might give them a bit of feedback myself. But when this is happening to you, I want to suggest to you, you need to slow your heartbeat down and remind yourself there could be a gem in this feedback for you somewhere, and you need to look for it. So, how can we make it easy for people to give us feedback? Well, there's a few key things that you can do, and the first one is you can simply ask for it. You can say to your manager, "How am I going, boss? What can I do to be a little bit more on track for you?" You can respond non-defensively. If they do give you some constructive feedback, you can say, "Is there something else that I can do as well?" Because it's a wonderful thing if you know what your manager's expectations are, because people tend to get a great sense of security from knowing that they're on track for their manager. But you can also make it easy for team members to give you feedback too, to say, "What can I do differently to make our working relationship a little bit easier?" Or maybe you might say it in a different way based on who you are and who your role is. I think we can also make it easy for people to give us feedback by letting them know we know that we're not perfect. So perhaps we might criticise ourselves a little bit. "I'm not quite sure if the standard of my work is what you're needing," or "I'm not happy with the fact that it took so long to do something." So when you criticise yourself a little bit, you're communicating the fact that you're not perfect and that you're going to be okay if they share something with you. So I want to encourage you to open yourself to feedback. In fact, if you're a manager, this is especially important for you, because managers' assessment as to how their team is travelling is often out of kilter with what their team is really saying. So it's really important that you elicit how your team really are travelling. So we know that outstanding managers do this on a regular basis. In fact, I had one great manager early in my career. He would say, "How are you going?" but also, "How am I going? What can I do to be a little bit more on track for you? What can I do to better support or encourage you in your role?" Now, it's not just effective managers who do this, it's also effective professionals in helping roles. In fact, we know that professionals who ask for feedback from their clients and who adjust their approach based on their feedback that they're given can improve outcomes by up to 65%. So this is not rocket science, asking for feedback and adjusting your approach, but common sense is not always commonly practiced. So I want to encourage you to do this in your work more.